Henry Lee Lucas was born into a world of violence and neglect in 1936 in a broken home in rural Virginia. His childhood was a grim foundation for the darkness that would later define his name. His mother, a violent alcoholic who forced him into humiliating acts and often dressed him as a girl, ruled their shack with cruelty. His father, an alcoholic amputee, watched helplessly as the family dissolved into chaos. Abuse, poverty, and isolation became Lucas's earliest teachers. At an early age, Lucas showed signs of detachment and instability. By 10, he was already torturing animals, and by his teens, he had dropped out of school and begun drifting through the South, surviving on theft and odd jobs. His first known act of lethal violence came in 1951 when he stabbed his mother to death during an argument, a crime he later described with chilling calm. He served time in prison, but when released, he found himself unable to reintegrate into society. Instead, he slipped into a life of transience and deceit. In the 1970s, Lucas met Ottis Toole, another drifter with a penchant for violence. The two men became inseparable, bound by their shared depravity. Together, they claimed responsibility for hundreds of murders across the United States, painting themselves as nomadic serial killers who left a trail of bodies in their wake. Lucas confessed to killing women, men, and children alike, often in disturbing detail. Yet over time, investigators began to suspect that many of these confessions were lies, fabricated to gain attention, favors, and a warped sense of fame. By the 1980s, Lucas had become a media sensation. He confessed to so many killings that police departments across the country began clearing unsolved cases based on his words alone. But as the evidence unraveled, it became clear that much of his story was fiction. Lucas had been in jail during many of the alleged crimes, and details he gave were often inconsistent or impossible. What remained certain, however, was that he had killed at least his mother and at least a few others. The full truth of his crimes may never be known. Henry Lee Lucas died in prison in 2001, his legacy tangled in myth, deceit, and brutality. Whether he was one of America's most prolific serial killers or one of its most notorious liars, his life exposed the dark intersection of crime, manipulation, and the human hunger for infamy, a man whose lies were as monstrous as the truths he left buried.